Call the meeting to order of the CIPC committee. I don't really have any comments or anything right now. There's a lot we're gonna get into. I did follow up, and we'll get into it, with individuals on some of the stuff we needed to follow up on, like Chris Kolofsky and that. So we're kind of gonna be, I know we did the ratings last time just as a ballpark, but I think we can get into it tonight seriously for the ratings, so. First thing, let's have everybody read the minutes, or you wanna take a minute to read the minutes to get those approved? Chris, I think you did a great job again, I like it. These were for you, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Any comments on them?
Good.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from
Okay.
the 11/14/24 meeting.
Second. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Roll call?
Gracie, aye.
Lopez, aye.
Forrest and I.
Bradford, aye.
Second aye. Okay, great. Just looking at the notes here from the last time, the book drop renovation that we were postponing. I believe Austin told me, you wanna say, it was taken care of?
Unfortunately, thank you. Unfortunately, I think some of the damage to that accelerated a little bit more with some of the rainfall that we had over the past several weeks. So much that some of the damage was extending a little bit more into more of the book drop area. So DPW has, and you probably noticed it if you look at the front of the library, we've removed the door right now. We've replaced some of the rotted out flooring that was there previously that I think you had seen before.
Right.
Interestingly enough, when we went to replace the door, we realized that it's actually a door that's a special order kind of thing, so we're actually still waiting on that door to come in. So it's been blocked off, but we can remove that from the capital request. Summary, I think what we had there is, correct me if I'm wrong, it was pretty substantial, it was about 40,000. I don't think we need to proceed further with that project. We've done that for probably around $5,000 to $6,000, just mostly in-house. I think the extent of some of the requests that Carrie had submitted for the 40,000 included, one, you're paying prevailing wage, and I think she was looking at a more substantial rehab of that room itself, which we've done at a much more affordable in-house rate and not as extensive as I think what she was looking for.
Okay. So we can wipe that off our list.
So we just saved you
That's it.
$35,000.
Don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, where's mine?
Does that include the carpet replacement?
No.
No,
So the carpet is, well, some of this was replaced. You may notice in some of the rooms, they look newer. I believe the town used some of the CARES Act funding in previous years, mostly for rooms that were used for the regional vaccine clinic. I think some of the carpets that we're talking about are more so upstairs. And most of that, as you can imagine, is labor, prevailing wage labor for that.
okay. I wanna get into, I think we'll do DPW first. We'll start talking about that stuff.
Can I, as you get into DPW, can I add one more thing for you for DPW?
Sure.
That just came on my radar this morning.
Okay,
You're gonna love it, especially those that are, who here is on has town water? Oh,
No,
great.
no, I don't have one.
To you? Okay, I'll pass this around if you just wanna take one. As you may be aware, our water department, I think, checks the flows quarterly. And then we also bill quarterly. Some of our water meters are beginning to significantly experience failures at a much more alarming rate than what has been occurring in the past. To give you an idea, we usually replace around 20 to 30 meters per year just because, like all things, sometimes things just break or aren't working well. This most recent quarter, 130 meters are in need of replacement. And after further discussion with the DPW director and our consulting engineer, most, if not all, of the 1,700 meters that are in town are beyond their useful life, which are about, I'm gonna say, around 15 years. So what does that mean? That means that there's probably a chance that we're also not getting accurate meter flows for a lot of our households, which is a consideration, I think, from a budgetary standpoint. So we are asking to include this on the capital plan for this year, simply for the committee's approval to and blessing to move forward and ask to be included on the State Clean Water Trust State Revolving Fund Program, which is a low interest of 1.5% per year loan program to fund the cost of this project. This is likely a 4-year project to take, essentially dividing up to 1,700 meters and replacing them over a 4-year period with the most up-to-date modernized system, including software, things like that. The advantage of the SRF program is, again, it's low interest, but there's also lots of incentives that come from the state program. So, for example, the town of Winchendon had a very similar program. Basically what they do is excess funds, they do principal forgiveness. So you end up not usually paying the $1 million, it's usually much less. Just simply due to the Clean Water Trust makes money and gives that back to the folks that are borrowing from them. So this is obviously a project that I don't think we were expecting this year, but I want to get it on your radar. And very similar to, I know, the discussion about the fire truck, kind of get your approval to at least move forward in the process so we can start including this in our financial and capital plans as well.
What's the restrictions if we go through that? Are there any holds to the state or the town on, like, well, we're gonna loan you $1 million and we're gonna ask you a 4-year payback? It's about $250,000 a year. Is that coming out of operating budget or out of sewer?
No, so it would be paid out of the water rates. So we actually already have an SRF program right now. I think the terms depend on the type of project. So for example, right, like a fire truck, you can only borrow 10 years versus a building is 20. I think there's some similar terms there. This is not a building project. So I think it's typically the loan cannot extend the useful life. So I would imagine that this maybe would be a 5-year borrowing.
Okay.
But again, I can get
What
those
is the
details.
useful life on these?
Like, it's about 15 years,
And they're about, just rough estimate, about $600 a piece
just about, yeah. And that 600 includes some of the
installation.
installation and everything else.
Anybody, before I ask any more questions, anybody else have any follow-up or more questions they want to ask?
So for that one, it's $1 million, so that'd be funded, all of that full amount would be funded immediately, not divvied up over 4 years, is that correct? For that loan? Or they're saying we'll pay you in increments for 4 years?
No, yeah, so we'd get the money up front, and then just the debt service is what we would allocate and would levy upon in the water rates.
Okay.
So that'd be included in our model.
Yeah, all right, so all of that is guaranteed to go towards the water meters, not find its way into other things?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
And that money would be deposited into the water fund?
No, I mean, it would be tracked separately.
Okay.
So, because it's essentially like it's weird because it's a loan, but it's also kind of a grant from the state, especially if we end up getting principal forgiveness.
Okay.
There would be a separate line item for that can only be used, to your point,
Yeah,
Britton,
so it can't, yeah, just,
for water meter. On the budget report, Harry, you'd see water meter replacement project.
Okay. And DPW would be replacing all of these themselves, or are we hiring an outside source?
So, so we did this ourselves 15 years ago, and I think some of the feedback, Chris Kolofsky was on the team that did it.
Yeah.
It took them a lot longer when it was a couple of DPW workers doing it. We can do it a lot faster if we contract it out. So I think we're gonna pay a little bit of a premium with that $1 million, but they get it done. They're contracted to do it, they just get it done.
And who would be, do we have any idea at this point, or we haven't done a request?
No, so we have to go to bid.
Okay.
This cost is based off of some of our press solicitation process.
Historical data,
I'm sorry?
historical data that you're using for,
Nope, so we've done recent price solicitations on this, just to see what it would cost. This came up over the, past maybe 2 weeks, and then we kind of have been sprinting to try to
as
find
best
out.
you could.
Yeah.
We're gonna be looking at 200,000, maybe a little bit more if it's a 5-year, coming out of water and sewer. How do we see water and sewer going over the next 5 years? Will there be enough money without hugely increasing our water rates to pay for that?
Yeah, so obviously, I think we're gonna have to talk about the rate impact as well, once and if we decide to do this kind of borrowing. Again, I also don't know if 5 years is the exact term, so I can find that out for you too, but, because I think that's a big impact, right? If it's 10 years, the debt service on that and what that would add to the water budget could be substantial, so I think we'll have to
I
figure
mean,
that
we're
out.
looking years down the road, and the equipment, some of the stuff that we're looking at will come out of water and sewer, and now we're taking another $250 out of water and sewer. So I'm trying to think ahead of what problems that would be from a capital expense standpoint, where we have to do this, and how much effect we'd have to raise if we wanted to maintain a stable fund. I mean, maybe some of the stuff you can't answer for me yet.
Well, I
but-
think some of the rate increases that like as much as I know that it was painful to make that vote and approve it to 15%, I do think that at least put the water and sewer fund in a good position for the future, where we have to be honest, utilities are expensive, and they need to have some level of reserves to maintain that infrastructure. I don't wanna call it out explicitly, but when you see $10.5 million in FY
I
'30
was
for
just
sewer,
gonna say that.
Yeah.
you know that it's not cheap.
That's what I mean, we're heading out towards
Right,
that.
and
Matt, you had this million in there, and then you got in 3 years? We got another 10.5, 4 years, I think, so.
Yeah, and that would also be an SRF project, for sure.
Okay.
So they do,
But that burden is paid for from those who are on the water sewer.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
if, I'm not, so I can't speak to that, but if I was, I'd be like,
Friends that are
whoa,
not.
what's gonna happen to my rates?
So with the new ones being more accurate, does that mean the old ones are undercounting now? Meaning more accurate will lead to higher revenue?
well,
Or
Answer that in a good way, cause it's yes.
well, I mean, it's
That's
no
an
different-
unanswerable question. You need to plead the fifth.
I mean, there's probably a lot of good analogies, but it's the same thing. Like anyone who has an old phone or old laptop, it just doesn't work as well as a newer one. And there's some better features on the newer ones that allow us to be a little bit more efficient. Some of the new water meters also greatly help with tracking leaks. So quite literally, it can detect the amount of flow between one house and another, and you can track it down and say there's a leak in between these two households, which right now, I don't know if anyone was on Main Street earlier this afternoon. We had our leak guy on Main Street, because what he's doing is, I can't remember what they're called, but there's these 2 poles.
2 sticks, the water sticks.
Yeah,
They
and they're
touch, there's water.
tracking leaks, whereas like a computer can do that for us. And they're pretty accurate. So there's some additional benefits that we get from that, other than just, to answer your question, probably more accurate readings.
If these are installed, does it make it easier to take the readings? Because I know in the past, we've had guys driving around with their electronics saying, getting the monitor. So does that improve our labor costs?
So, I'm not aware if these meters have what I've seen out there. There's some which are called smart readers, which essentially have,
An RFID on them.
Yeah.
And they literally drive by and they capture it, got a whole neighborhood.
no,
through
they're
one
even
vehicle.
smarter. They
just go
have
back
cell
to the-
service,
Oh, wow,
and they
okay.
just send right back, so you could be in the office, so.
They have that in Holliston, cause I got a call, 'cause I had just installed my toilets and I had toilet leaking, and the water department called me the next morning and said, hey, your water usage is like 100 gallons last night. I was like, oh shit, and I thought the house was gonna be flooded when I got there, it turned out it was just a toilet running, but
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
yeah. I know Shrewsbury just switched to the smart meter program. You know, they have the benefit of also having an electric utility, so, so that's how they were able to switch to those, but, I don't think these are quite as smart, but they're better than what we have.
Well, I guess I'm looking at this, if by installing a little bit better meter, and we can do that to cut down on labor costs, say it's another 100,000. If we can save 100,000 over the next 4 or 5 years, is that something we should be looking to go to? If
You have a prime opportunity to, if this is, it sounds like, again, I don't know much about the intricacies of why these all need to be replaced, but it sounds like they're toast. If you're talking about a little bit more money to upgrade to an RFID system or a smart meter, I don't know what that does. If it doubles this, probably not gonna fly.
Right,
But like you said, if it's a little bit of money and we can save on those guys, the DPW members doing other things, working towards other things, take those hours that they would need to read these meters and have doing other work in town, I think, yeah, that's a net gain, so.
I mean, if they're smart meters that can be sent back to the DPW, then you've got two people, two girls in there working, so that maybe one of them can be monitoring this and take that off of Chris, take
I
this
don't-
off of. So
I don't
that's-
think that would be a hard sell to most people who are on water.
Right, so I don't know what it costs, but is it something we should have them look into and see? If it's an extra $100, that's, 170,000. But if it's $300, that's a different story. I can't imagine it would be that much, but I think we should look into it. What do you guys think? Sue?
Yeah, was your request tonight, was this something that you wanted to move, like you need to move forward with like now?
No, I
Is
mean-
that- I felt
What's the
urgency in the way
timeline?
you presented it,
Yes.
so.
So, I think if we're at least starting the discussions right now, the eligibility period, I think, opens up in another month or so to be able to start submitting applications. So certainly, I think that gives us enough time to go back and try to get some pricing maybe on the smart meters, and we can come back.
But just saying like tonight that we would be, as a general thought, okay with this direction.
Right.
I think, is that just kind of what
Yeah,
we're
if there's
looking for?
consensus that it makes sense to start moving forward, I think that would allow us to maybe do a little bit more.
Thoughts?
Sounds like it's gonna
It
have to
has to
happen.
happen.
Right, okay.
Clean water and.
Okay, so do I have a motion to advise the town administrator to move forward on this? That it will be on our recommendation,
I will make such motion.
okay? For these
Second.
meters, with the opportunity to evaluate better meters or smart meters so that we can evaluate the cost at the final time to see whether we would go for those or stay with this program.
I will make said motion. I don't want to say all that twice,
Okay,
if everyone's okay with that.
do I have a second?
We accept your amended amendment.
Let me amend technically I need to amend my motion to include that extra
To add
verbiage,
the
yes.
extra.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bradford, aye.
Okay, Second, aye.
Gracie, I.
Lopez, aye.
Morrison, aye.
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw off here.
that's okay. We're only gonna be here till 10 anyway, so. Okay, so that is taken care of. So when do you think you'll be able to find out about this, Austin? Does Chris need to look into it for us, or is that something you will do, or what?
Yeah, I'll talk with Chris. I mean, so this came up in our weekly meeting today, so I can follow up with him tomorrow and let him know that we had this discussion. I told him I was gonna at least present it to you guys tonight,
Okay,
and I can ask him if he can do a little bit more digging.
okay,
And just so you know, I mean, so we actually have a current SRF project right now. I believe we borrowed $2 million through the SRF program, just for water projects.
Right.
And our debt service right now on that is about 260.
You're talking about this ongoing I&I program?
No. So a couple years ago, when Joe Buckley was here, the town borrowed $3 million, 2 for water, 1 for sewer. And that was pretty much to get caught up on some infrastructure work. One of the projects, for example, was the Miles Road Water Main Replacement Project at the tune of about $600,000. They also did some design work on Miles, on Sunnyside, on a couple other streets, and then just general upkeep and maintenance of some other water infrastructure.
Okay.
And then sewer, same thing. They designed Miles Road Sewer Force Main, which is at 100% design right now, and then a couple other.
Now, I've noticed though, we have the sewer Miles Road Force Main rehab requested at 1.4 million in fiscal year 29. So that's separate from what you just referenced?
Yeah, so a part of that SRF funding was to get started on that design work.
Design, okay.
So that was fully funded. I can't remember off the top of my head how much that design costed, but that resulted in the cost that you
gotcha.
see there.
Okay. So the I&I work is a total operating budget item going forward. That has nothing to do with the borrowing at all.
So in my opinion, I&I should be operating expenses. I think the way it's been treated here is it's been treated as a capital expense, but we have to do an I&I work every year, so I think it should be included in the sewer budget. It hasn't been, so for the purpose of, I think, just keeping things the way they were, we kept them on your capital plans. So however you want to treat it, if it's recommended to put it back in the operating.
Well, we recommend the amount every year that it has to be done. We did not, I don't think we can look back, but I don't think we recommended it come specifically out of sewer, did we?
So if it's for sewer, I think we are required to use sewer retained earnings for it,
Okay,
unless this committee and ultimately town meeting authorizes general fund subsidy for sewer expenses, which
I don't
I don't
think
know
we
if we've
did.
ever done that. Yeah.
never done that.
So it would have to come out of retained earnings.
Okay. I spoke with Chris on this, and he said, I can't tell you much about the figure this year. We haven't received with the costs that go up and everything, we really don't know. He says, it's gonna be close. You know, if you're looking at 160,000, then it might be 170,000, depending on the costs of everything that have gone up over that time since this was put together. Joe Buckley did this, Chris didn't do it, so he just said, you know, I'm gonna go with these figures, but if you're looking at this, we need to approve this year, that we can say 160,000, because he didn't know. 160,000 would need to be recommended to the town to come out of the sewer fund. Anybody have any comment on that? Because we don't recommend the whole 800,000.
Can I provide a little bit more clarification as to why?
Sure.
So the I&I work definitely wouldn't be a lump sum funding, because it's work that we have to do every year. And are folks familiar with what I&I is?
November 7th.
Everybody know what I&I is?
Yeah, the I&I fee, yep.
But are you familiar with what that essentially is? So essentially sewer pipes, something about them, especially ours, they're leaky. And especially one of the worst things that can happen for a sewer system is when you have groundwater that's going into the sewer pipes. Why? Because then it flows through Holden and through Worcester and to the Upper Blackstone treatment plant, and we're paying for that. Now, why are we paying to treat groundwater? We should be paying to treat sewer. So essentially what we do is it's called inflow and infiltration. We test all of our pipes and all of our manholes to see how much groundwater is leaking into the sewer pipes. And that gives us an idea how much flow, and then that allows us to prioritize essentially capital repairs. A few years ago, there was a significant issue on the trunk sewer line that's owned by the state. And the DPW director at the time advocated for the state to do I&I work on their own pipe. They did that, which resulted in, surprisingly, a lot of infiltration, which they fixed and resulted in some cost savings for us. So we also have to do that on our sewer pipes across the entire system. So that's what that work covers. It's not a one-time expense. It's every year we have to do some sort of I&I work.
What would be nice to know, I don't know if we can, maybe you can answer or Chris can answer it. If we spend 160,000 doing I&I work, is there a way to track what our savings would be on something like that? I mean, we spend 160, would it reduce our sewer bill by 20, 30? I'm trying to figure out how when we come to the town meeting and we recommend that we want to spend 160, how do we say to them, by spending 160, it will help us save $20,000, $30,000 a year, basically, after this is done? So it's every year we do that. So we're not just spending money, we're also recouping some of it in the savings to you for sewer users.
Yeah, so because we haven't done a lot of I&I work ourselves over the past few years, I think it'd be hard to get those figures for Rutland, but I think what I can do is I can reach out to, I know Holden does a lot of I&I work.
Okay.
And they're a good example because their sewer also goes to the Upper Blackstone treatment plant. So I think I could ask the director how much they've seen realized in savings for ratepayers by doing their own I&I work. And, it's obviously not
Right.
it's not Rutland, but,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
could
so-
at least use that as an example of a town nearby that's done it, how much they've saved by doing it. There's also, again, there's some other factors there, right? I mean, we could do all this I&I work, save a lot of flow, and then all of a sudden the big development comes online and there's more sewer and we're not realizing any savings. So, that's hard to track as well, but
But it would be interesting to know that we can say that there is a payback. We are saving the amount of water use. Our sewer people who are on sewer are saving money because we're not sending groundwater, you know what I'm saying, out.
yeah. Yep. I shouldn't mention it, but I will. I think the one thing as well that Rutland ratepayers and Holden and West Boylston ratepayers don't get the privilege of is we don't also know how much infiltration is happening in Worcester's system. So how much groundwater, so, they can't blame us if their own pipes are leaking, right? So, but unfortunately, we end up kind of paying for everyone's infiltration because we're on the far end of the system. So Rutland goes through Holden, Worcester, and then up to the Millbury treatment plant. So, but I think we're in the best interest to do our part on our system and hope that everyone else is doing the same. But so as a Worcester resident, thank you for paying for my.
Yeah. Okay, so do we have a motion to recommend that the pipeline I&I rehabilitation project, recommend that $168,000 be forwarded or be paid out of sewer earnings for this year, for 2026? You know what I mean?
It's out of sewer earnings?
In other words, ratepayers pay into the sewer fund. This gets paid out of the sewer fund.
Now, I guess, just going back to what you were saying about, because again, to Austin's point, this seems more to me like yearly maintenance. So can we put that into the sewer budget, so we're not doing this every year? It just seems like it, especially because Chris can just kind of, to your point, wing a number, whereas if it's coming out of his, well, I guess not his budget, but it's the sewer budget, I feel like he's gonna be a little more accurate about what he's gonna request for the year, cause it's gonna affect his.
The thing I don't know, Chris, is this an ongoing part of an operating budget? or is it a one-time deal where we're spending this kind of money for I&I? It's a project. That I don't know. So if we're spending $200,000 every year as a maintenance item, then we have to kind of reclassify that because it's not a capital project. It's an operating expense. And I think this is more of a capital project or ongoing. So if it's an ongoing
Sounds like
operating
it's
expense, it
ongoing,
really
though.
shouldn't fall under us. It should fall under the budget.
I would agree.
So we can decide that the project that we're overseeing here be shifted to operating budget through the budgeting system and not part of a capital expense for us.
I guess, to your point, this is just figuring out which one. Now, to his point, if you go, oh, area X is the worst, it's leaking through the roof, we're just dumping money away, cleaning groundwater, we've gotta replace that. Now then, wouldn't, that I would assume would go under a capital request, just like you're saying here, the Miles main rehab, that's doing the work, that's a capital, but, you know, we kinda took care of the investigation aspect of it
Through the operating. Yep,
through
absolutely.
the operating.
It's-
So in this, I feel like the rehab is the investigating, operating, and then, we know what we need to do, we need $1 million to replace this line or whatever.
Right.
And I guess the
Is that
other
doable,
question of that
Austin?
then is,
Yeah.
the sewer pipe replacement in 2030 for 10 mil, is that just gonna wipe the slate clean with the I&I rehab, cause it's all new anyways?
So,
No,
and please forgive me, I don't remember the exact detail off the top of my head, and I have all the paperwork on my desk, but so the 10.4 million, I believe, is just replacing the AC pipe, asbestos something, pipe. Which is not a majority of our pipe, well, it is a majority of our pipe, but it's not all of our pipe.
So the I&I rehab's still gonna have.
Yeah,
that.
and-
So
and-
again, it's a separate
Yeah.
operating
good point.
expense,
Good
I
point.
feel like.
Any comments on what Chris said? Any follow-up?
I agree.
I will say though, I&I costs will definitely substantially go down with newer pipes, right? You know, so it wouldn't be,
So the
Well, I guess I
initial-
think of fire truck or maintenance, or, you know, we have the fleets, you know, you get it and you understand, and to your point, newer truck, less maintenance. Older truck, more maintenance is gonna come along, but, you know, yeah, we'll do the truck as a capital expense, but then you should really,
The maintenance should be in the budget.
yeah, the maintenance should be in the
Right.
budget.
And I appreciate that, Chris, because, you know, you've been on the committee for a while now, so you start to see things that you question. And this may be one of those items that we question, shouldn't come through us. You know, because it's a maintenance item, basically. It's not a capital.
Because you're never gonna not be, even with a totally new system, you're never not going to be performing
Right.
that work.
Right.
It's part
So-
of maintenance.
perhaps, I mean, maybe a referral of this to the select board for your consideration of the FY 26 budget.
Okay,
So it's not included in the budget, but maybe through your referral to the board, that would then tell me and Chris to put that in
okay,
for the town.
sure. We agreeable on that? Okay. Can I have a motion on this then, that we refer this to the select board to be considered as part of the operating budget for the sewer enterprise?
I will make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
second, okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Bradford, aye.
Second, aye.
UCI.
Lopez, aye.
Force and I.
Okay, good, thank you. Done. Okay. The next thing we have is the street sweeper. I spoke with Chris on this, and I asked him, number one, we had a question whether it was new or used. And let me get this at the top here, we're talking street sweeper, whether it was new or used. And he said it's new. You're hardly ever gonna find a used one on this. The annual maintenance wasn't that bad. And I also discussed whether or not he could lease it. And maybe Austin can, because this brings us into a bigger thought. And that is, his cost now estimates went from 250 to 300,000. That's how much it went up in price. And I'm thinking, if we approve this for 300,000, that's a huge capital hit. And if we lease it, and he did, I don't know if I gave you guys a copy of the lease or not, but if we lease it, the lease fee comes out to 80,000 bucks a year. And part of what I'm trying to figure out here is we get about 5%, we get about what, 130, 140,000 a year into our budget, 5% of into our capital fund goes in a year. So if we get 130 in there and we lease it, is it possible to take the 80 grand out of the capital fund that doesn't impact our overall capital expenses? That we have room for other stuff that we will approve?
So my recommendation for a lease of this equipment would be to utilize the stormwater fund,
Right,
enterprise fund. So you're not having to use
capital,
capital at all, because, I mean, street sweeping is one of the most important elements of our stormwater compliance that we're required to do annually. So my recommendation would be to use those funds.
so how do you guys feel about leasing? I mean, I just brought it up, he did give me a quote, if you wanna pass it around, you can take a look at the quote.
What's the
I'd
benefit?
be open to leasing, but it doesn't sound like a long-term, that we're gonna come out on the right end of that.
It's a lease to buy with $1, so we own it at the end of the period.
Yeah, most of the municipal leases, it's lease to own, we don't end
Okay.
up returning.
Right. And I know it's putting more pressure on stormwater, but I'm trying to figure out how we can conserve and spread the wealth
Yeah, instead of a one-time hit.
instead of a one-time shot out there. Because there are other things that, as we go through, we might need for a one-time shot to use it up. And I'm trying to think of, if we can lease other stuff, can we use our capital fund even to do it then? So we get 150 in, let's say we pay out 80. We're still ahead of the game and getting what we want without putting any pressure on the town. If we can borrow from the capital, if we can withdraw from the capital fund.
And if we're doing a lease, it's a new one, right?
This is new.
And he was saying 300 would probably be for a used one?
No, for brand new.
This new amount, new regardless, right?
Oh, yeah.
This
he
is all
said
that's
so.
available.
Okay, a new is all that's available.
Right.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? So if we do that, the street sweeper definitely, I think, should be recommended on this.
I'm a big fan of spreading costs out anyways, just as a general rule. I mean, there's a lot of places you can't with this stuff.
Right.
I'm not opposed to a lease. I don't know all the parameters of it. You know,
We
what
lease
do
our-
we actually end up paying for it at the end of that lease period?
Whatever the
versus
cost
what
is.
we would pay cash is. So there's no
No
additional.
No additional. It's a buck at the end. The interest rate's about a little over 5%.
Of course, you've got the 4-year versus the 5-year.
Right.
There's really the two different numbers that you're
Right,
looking at.
so we
because
can
those
choose-
rates are,
We could recommend a 4 or 5. You know what I'm saying?
I think there's options to extend longer. Anything beyond 3 years needs town meeting approval. As a part of the capital plan, we'd obviously get town meeting approval
Right.
anyways, but, you know, I can't remember how old our current sweeper is, it's pretty old.
It's,
1999.
Yeah, so
But-
we're,
99.
yeah,
we're gonna have it, but we're gonna have it more than 5 years for sure. So if, I think it was also, you know, if the committee wanted to explore maybe longer terms, we could do that too.
so what I'm talking about here right now is, number one, should we look at a lease? It's gonna come out of stormwater. But in the future, if we have any leases, items that don't come out of enterprise funds, is it possible to take it out of capital every year to pay that lease payment? That's the question. I don't know if we can. I don't know what the logistics or lawful stuff is on it. So we're having to, in a couple of weeks, we're gonna invite the treasurer and the accountant in here to go over a lot of the stuff with us and what all this stuff means and how we should use it and what we should be thinking about. So maybe they could answer that, you know, but by then, our recommendation has to be in, and I'm trying to think about, for this one, we know what we wanna do, but I'm thinking of for the future.
So, the answer is yes. It would be essentially a transfer at town meeting to a general fund line item for that expense.
Okay,
So however you end up funding your capital plan, very similar to, I think, some of the funding that took out of capital this year, actually ended up being transferred to an article and we pay that expense. So we pay that invoice against that article.
okay, so,
I guess just, we wanna be careful, right, of using those one-time funds for ongoing expenses, right?
Right.
Not knowing, every year may not be a good year that we can contribute to the capital stabilization fund, so, we'd have to make sure that there's contingencies if there isn't funds.
well, I'm
available
thinking,
there.
again, we look at it and say, okay, 80,000, that's 300,000. Over the next 5 years, what will go into our capital fund? Say at a minimum, 150, 200,000. So we have, what, 300,000 there now?
Not anymore,
No?
no.
Two something?
We just used, some, at this most recent town meeting. If I can talk a little slower. So I don't think this accounts for the transfer. I can't remember at the top of my head how much we used from capital, but I wanna say there's about 300.
300 left?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in my financial mind, I'm saying, all right, so we don't get the 130,000 every year, say we get 50. I mean, it's mandated 5% every year that goes in, but maybe the town doesn't, we get 50 one year, 100 the next. But it still makes up the 80, so we're not gonna bleed the account out if this is the only thing what we're doing that way. And that's what we'd have to be careful of. So I'm just thinking, is it, number one, can we do it? Is it lawful to do? It doesn't violate any bylaw or any financial, policy, things like that.
Yep, nope, it wouldn't.
Is that
So we used
something,
120 at the town meeting this year.
Yeah, okay.
So that, yeah, brings it right to around.
is that something we kinda missed the boat on with that fire truck? Was that a possibility?
I don't think on the fire truck it was, because we're looking at, what, 20 years over almost 2 million?
Yeah, you can't lease that long.
Yeah, couldn't do that.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Alright,
Okay, so, okay, that's coming out of stormwater. Right? It's not coming out. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. The next one I have, well, let me jump to something else first. Okay. I had a nice talk.
Did we need to make a motion to look into the lease or no?
Well, did we make a motion already to release this yet?
No, I don't.
Okay.
no, I think
thanks.
we're in agreement.
I'd like to make I'd like somebody to make a motion that we recommend the purchase of a street sweeper to replace the 1999 Elaine Street sweeper, and that we look into a lease, and at least to be funded through the sewer enterprise fund.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second that.
second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Bradford, aye.
Okay, second aye.
Gracie, aye.
Lopez, I.
Force and I.
Okay, so that one we're recommending. Okay.
So people ask about the $100.
What's that?
I'm kidding.
What?
I said when people ask about the $100, you can say it's for a new street sweeper. I'm joking, kind of.
This is an interesting one.
I would do it.
This has to do with a former police cruiser that was repurposed for the water department. It was in 2014, and it got repurposed. And what he's looking for is a F-250 available used. He said they're hard to find. Will the plow be from the old 2014 vehicle? Maybe, maybe not. How much is the annual maintenance cost? Well, it's not like anything else because it's a police cruiser, so it doesn't have a four-wheel axle and all that stuff. And the police cruiser doesn't get used that much. However, he would like to have a new truck, possibly an F-150, F-250, and we talked about it, and I said, we've got in 2028 a new truck coming up, the F-350 coming up in 2028. And I said to Chris, let me ask you something. I don't want to spend money on two new vehicles. What would you say if we could give you that fire truck, the F-350, which is way above what you're looking for, and we could transfer that from the fire department to you, and then you could use that for the water department? And I said, and then we buy a new one for the fire department, because that's coming up in a few years. That way, we only have to buy one vehicle. And we're not looking for a standard 150 for the water department. And we don't have any expense on it out of our capital funds for that. We only have one auto expense. What do you guys think about that? I mean, he was agreeable to it. I talked to the fire chief as
Say,
well.
that sounds like a win for him.
Right.
Yeah, right. And I talked to the chief and I said to him, I said, if you've got this police cruiser, can you wait a year or so until it comes up? Instead of doing it this year, we do it next year for you. Because it's gonna take about a year and a half to get a new truck anyway, so. And he said, no, I said, I'll make it work. I can do it. So now the question becomes, what do you think about that timeline and where it fits in, and then buy, because the new truck's gonna be probably about 90,000 for the new fire truck. Not the fire truck, but the
F-350.
the F-350.
95, yeah.
Yeah.
95,000.
It's probably gonna be more than that, but
Yeah,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
because we know it's
I
gonna
like the
cost,
idea of it.
it's gonna cost 60 to 70,000 if we buy him one,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna do that.
I've never loved this truck.
Huh?
I've never loved this one.
No.
The green one?
No, this whole idea,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it just didn't really make that much sense to me.
yeah. So what do you, what do we think? Comments, please.
I like the idea of it if the entities, if everybody's on board and everybody's good with it, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I
So
think
what, what does that do with the timeline? He gets it from the
pushes
fire.
it.
He's gotta wait a year or 2 years, so he's gotta maintain this cruiser to get the other one.
To get the F-350 from the
Right.
fire.
Right. And I asked Seth, I said, well, what do you have to take off of that? Because it's designed for the fire. He goes, nothing. We don't have to take anything off. All he has to do is change the lenses from yellow to red. He said, that's it.
Or red to
And
yellow.
didn't Seth
Probably
say that,
re-
that one's already
we'd
got a
probably
plow,
repaint
cause they
it,
plow
just
the
not-
fire?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
sure.
already- We can
Maybe
give the
take the
whole
emblem
plow
off the
back.
side, I don't
They
know.
plow that now. so
Take the
he
center
can-
off.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
yeah, if the fire
I'd
department.
rather
if-
repurpose that. I mean, to Dan's point, I wasn't a huge fan of this request to begin with. I thought it was kinda
Frivolous. Well,
and
asking Santa.
I wasn't gonna say it.
No, you said the quiet part out loud, but you said it. No, that's good. That's exactly
I
what
think
it was.
In defense of I think the water department, certainly I think the request was, I hate to say this, but less intense than probably what we see from our peer communities or neighboring communities. So for example, I don't know if anyone has seen the really nice water department vehicle that Paxton is driving around.
yes, I have.
It's really nice. And that's their chief water operator that drives around that vehicle, versus ours is driving a broken down cruiser.
Yeah.
I don't wanna say anything about Holden, but Holden has some nice stuff for everyone. But, this truck is used to do construction. It is a take-home vehicle for the chief water operator because he's 24/7. So he uses it to respond to water main breaks, obviously to plow the area around the water treatment plant, the pump stations, down to the water tanks, down to the pump station. So it's certainly used actually every day by the chief or by someone at the department. So it's definitely a used vehicle, and water department is responsible for plowing all of their assets. The highway department obviously understandably does the roads. So it is especially used for plowing. I do agree though that this project or this proposal makes sense, cause they actually get something better than what they requested.
Right.
And that, anyone who's seen car 3, parked in front of the fire station, that is a beast of a truck.
Yes.
So I think this would make sense, and they can fit their tools and, you know,
And-
very
and I-
similar to, I think, what our DPW foreman drives right now.
Right. And I'm not so much focused, and I don't think we should be that much focused that the water department gets this. My point is that this is gonna go to DPW at water. If Chris feels there's a better truck he wants to replace and give to water, I think that's up to him, not us. But I think this is the way to go, to get him better equipment and upgrade his equipment, cause go out and try to buy a 350 for 60 grand, you ain't gonna do it.
No.
So,
I'm
I
on
like
board.
the idea. The question, I guess, this is,
Yeah.
this is on
And
for
what's the
29, right?
What's
The
that?
fire is looking for for fiscal year
Yes,
29.
you're
So
right.
does that timeline work for
yeah,
this?
it does for
for the
him.
transfer.
We might get it, well, no, what we might do is order it a year or two earlier. Instead of waiting for 29,
Like,
we
bump it
might
to
order it in
28?
27 to get in 28.
Yeah.
Well, so
So
are
it's-
you, so Chris's request was for this year, right, for the?
Yeah.
Yes.
So are you proposing to move the fire department vehicle up this year?
No.
At least for ordering?
No, but we're probably next year. I asked Chris,
Gotcha, so delaying
right, when-
DPW project a year, but moving up fire 2 years.
In the middle.
right, because he said, yes, we'll make it work.
So,
Particularly if we can give him the 350.
so administratively in-house, when we make our recommendation, are we gonna unilaterally move that up? Or does the fire department need to sign off on that? To request a new vehicle?
No,
I had assumed, that's why I said administratively, I didn't know if.
So I think it'll just be part of our, whatever the recommendations are, we'll put that into the capital budget.
Yeah, okay.
For this year / the next few
I
years.
just wanna make sure we were dotting the i's, crossing the t's
Right.
with that. If we're gonna move something up, cause we presented this budget before and it was this far out.
right.
And now we're bringing it in, I just wanna make sure that we're disclosing that.
I think that if we make it next year, we put it into next year's recommendation, so to speak, or we recommend it that it be put in next year. I don't know if Austin, we should recommend it, that it be put onto the 2027 warrant, or just wait and recommend it next year, because Chris and Seth both know what we're doing here.
Yeah, so, what, I think maybe what I can do is I can take that and I can adjust our capital request summary to be sort of what the consensus of the committee is. It seems like the consensus is to move it up sooner. So I can modify our capital plan a little bit to be what
Yeah.
you guys have suggested,
That's
because I
what I
think it
was
is a little early to make 27 recommendations.
Right.
So maybe next year at this time, we can just confirm that the committee is still okay with.
But yeah, might as well move it up now if that's the
To
plan.
your point also though, Harry, if anytime we push something, so this F-350 that the fire's looking for in 29 for 95, we push it up, it's probably 95 now, it's probably gonna be 130 in 29, so we're actually potentially
I think Seth's probably one of the better ones at accounting for
inflating.
increases.
Okay,
And he's using state contract pricing, which usually remains pretty stable, especially for vehicles.
okay.
Maybe fluctuates a couple of percentage points rather than what we get on for some of our own vehicles.
It doesn't say open market, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I just know the fire truck just went up and
Yeah.
up and up and up, so.
And the other thing is, this already has a plow. So we don't have to go out and spend $10,000 or whatever on a plow for them. So they're getting a nice package there. And if it does go up 10 grand or whatever in 27, well, we just don't have to buy a plow. I mean, I see it as a win-win for the town
No, I think it's a great idea.
in terms of, because I don't know about you guys, but I hear all the time, how come we have another piece of equipment? Why are we buying another piece?
Well, you're gonna get that no matter what we do.
Right, but now we don't have to
Especially
buy
when
a
you see that
piece.
new ladder truck parked up front.
So, okay, so that'll be.
Well, I'm waiting for the phone call. Yeah, we mismeasured. It doesn't fit in the fire station. When's that new fire station getting
Yeah,
built?
that's Seth's back, yeah, that's his way.
That's my bad.
So do I have a motion that we table the three-quarter pickup truck requested by DPW and to be moved up to 2027 for consideration?
I'll make a motion for the water pickup truck, to be
Okay.
moved.
Okay,
I'll second that.
second, okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Roll call,
Bradford, aye.
Second, aye.
Gracie, aye.
Lopez, aye.
Force and I.
Great, thank you. Okay, next one is the dumps, on the dump trucks. Chris and I had a good discussion on that one. And we're not talking about trucks, we're just talking about the dumps.
Body.
The body that can be moved anywhere. They will do the work, they just gotta order the body, but they'll put it on, they'll install it, they do all that kind of work. He's looking at two, because one of them was made out of regular steel, it wasn't stainless. So it is rotted to the core. And the other one was made out of steel as well, and it's gonna be rotted out
Soon.
So I asked him, I said, well, why didn't you request both? If they're that bad, why didn't you request both in the same year so we could get it done? And these are gonna be stainless steel, so they're not gonna rot. And he said, well, to be honest with you, I was trying to be nice to you guys and spread it out. And I said, I don't know, you replace one and then you gotta, if we're gonna do this thing, shouldn't we do it both in 1 year? If we can find the money for it, if there's a way we can do it? Or would you guys still like to see it spread out 60-60?
Well, that's where I'm
'Cause he
at.
does
I'd
need
rather
to.
see things spread out and sort of share the wealth, so to speak, over the years.
Okay.
Unless there is some inherent,
Right,
you
just
know,
some sort of
like
deal, buying two at
safety.
once.
Yeah, if two at once, he says, hey, man, I can save us 20 grand or
Yeah, cause
whatever.
I,
it is.
Get you
and
two for
I
100.
believe the other aspect of this that we were wondering is, we were doing the math on the dumps, which is just the dump, and then the body, and he had, I think, another request, we were trying to figure out
There were
if he was gonna
multiple, yeah.
have
There was
more
a truck
trucks than
and a dump.
dumps, or
Yeah.
the
Right.
truck he was gonna get was gonna
Yeah, we
have
got
one.
confused.
So it didn't, is he gonna have an extra one, just, like, that's, I guess, my concern is
No, he
how
needs,
the math works out,
Yeah.
and maybe it makes more
No,
sense to
he
spread
only-
them out.
these are the two that are really bad.
Okay.
I think he does have another one, but that's not in discussion. If one of these, if one of the trucks goes bad, he can take the dump off that, if we're getting another truck, he can take the dump off that, put this dump on that one, so we don't have to buy another dump for that truck. So we're circulating the dumps on it. But again, I think it's just important to him that he needs one, because the sand spreader was the same thing. He goes, we got so many holes in it, we're just welding all the time, because it's all corroded and rusted out. And that can be attached to this, but the dump is what he's really concerned about. So if the committee agrees that we need to spread it out, we can recommend one for this year.
Yeah, I think I agree with Britton that unless there's some sort of advantage to doing both at once, I'd prefer to spread it.
I asked him about the cost. He says, you're not gonna, unless the steel prices go through the roof, you're not gonna see much of a change in the cost of the dump body.
I'm okay with, I mean, if he needs one now, I'm okay. I mean, obviously, I'm okay with that. I mean,
Yeah, I'm good with one.
and I don't wanna deny anybody the equipment they need, but if we can, if he's not like dying for it, like, hey, we need it now, or there's some benefit to buying a package, I'd rather see us take that and kind of, spread the
Spread it out.
cost over the years.
Just like I said, he did that himself, so I'm just.
Yeah. No, it's a good, I wish there was a package deal you could do and save some money on some of this stuff. It seems crazy that you can't do that, but
Right.
it is what it is.
Okay,
That's my 2 cents.
okay, so I'll let somebody make a motion that we recommend purchasing the dump.
A 2
However,
for 1.
2 for. Buy one for double the price, get the second one free.
what is your recommendation on how we pay for this? As you can see down here, we can't do water or sewer, so we could float a bond for it. It's not gonna go through on 60. I don't think state aid's gonna give us any money. We don't have any trust funds. It's not a revolving fund, so we can't use that. So we do have free cash, stabilization, or capital that we can take it out of.
What's left in the capital, you said?
300?
What's in free cash?
Huh?
What's in free cash?
$1 million,
And what's in stabilization?
1.5.
1.5 million? And what do you think taking 60 grand from that would do?
From which one?
Whichever one. Free cash?
Stabilization, is that even,
Does it have to fit a
stabilization can be
descriptor?
used
Yeah.
for that?
No, so, town meeting,
It's at the discretion.
town meeting can vote however they want for spending of that. It's, typically a rainy day fund or for one-time purchases kind of thing, so capital is a good use of those funds, but obviously you don't wanna get that fund too low, affecting your bond rating, but, certainly a capital purchase would be appropriate.
For free cash?
Either, any
Stabilize.
of those, yep.
So, free cash, I tend to lead to, because free cash is used a lot for operating expenses, not so much for capital, I tend to lean towards stabilization for that. It's a small amount at 60, it's not $500,000 we're asking for, it's not $250,000. So that was where I would kind of lean to, is looking at stabilization for this. And again, it's just a recommendation from us. It doesn't mean the town's going to accept it. Doesn't mean that Austin or the board is going to recommend that that's where it come from, but that's our recommendation.
So you're recommending the stabilization fund.
So we're going to recommend buying it, but we're going to recommend that it come out of stabilization.
Okay with that?
Oh, there. Looking for the bylaws? I think in the other room, yeah.
So what do you think about that approach?
I don't have a strong opinion on source. I'm on board with recommending it.
Okay. Susan, you got any?
I'm okay recommending it. I guess I don't know enough of what implication it has, taking from which fund, so I guess if that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter.
It kind of matters in the long run or in the short run, how much cash we're gonna have available for operating expenses. Can 60 do it? Particularly by the time May rolls around, to see where our cash is gonna be, if that's an issue. But again, stabilization, we're at $1 million. It's not exactly where we should be in order to get good financials for the town, so, but I think that's the least offensive piece of where to take the money from. And that's why I'm having the accountant and the treasurer come in, so they can start explaining these things to us, to you, so that you have a great grasp of where we're looking for money. Okay? Britton?
Like I said, I'm more on, from the stabilization if possible. I think that's sort of the consensus. And again, spreading out the two dumps.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I definitely recommend it. Again, we can recommend stabilization, but FinCom, Select Board, anybody's gonna overrule us.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
By the time things roll around, we may have a better idea on how accounts are gonna look anyways. So,
They make it happen.
To your point, I think it's the least offensive, but if there's a better looking account, when the time comes, somebody else can
Yeah.
make that final determination.
So, can I have a motion to recommend the purchase of a combination dump sander body for $60,000 to be funded out of stabilization?
I'll make said motion.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
all right. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. This one is the Holder Municipal Tractor replacement. This is the one that they use for a lot of mowing that doesn't require the big tractor with the arm along roads and stuff, and it also isn't the little mower by hand. This is the one that will take, if you're familiar with the field,
It's a brush hog.
yeah, kind of like that, right. That's what it's for.
So this is the 74 Ford that is getting replaced.
What's that?
This is the one that says 1974 Ford tractor being replaced.
No, this
The
is,
two thousand
It's a
ten,
2010, it's the one that actually has a sweeper as the picture.
yeah.
okay.
I think, cause I think one of our, not to interrupt you here, but I think one of I think our questions from the last meeting was, we had like 3 tractors that were all being requested, and we didn't have clarification on
Right.
what was what.
This one here, was what they also wanted to use for clearing sidewalks in town. This is the I'm sorry. This is not the picture, it's what they use for snowing, when you get snow, doing the sidewalks.
Oh, the little mini
In
plows,
summer,
yeah.
right,
It's got a cab, it's got,
Right.
yeah.
right. I asked him, I said, 190,000, that's a lot of
It's a
money.
it's a specialty piece of equipment.
Yep,
I
yeah.
can-
So the question is,
Now that we know what it is.
I don't think we can really do this through the sewer fund, not that I wanna put 190 grand in there. You might be able to lease this one, but I know he put it in this year. It's a snow blower, mower, it does sidewalks, it can spread sand, it's a multi-purpose.
Yeah, I've
Thing.
seen 'em.
And I don't know if that's something we wanna consider this year for not, cause when I look here at,
Oh, well, I thought is this the one that when he was here talking to us, he said the motherboard or something was fried and it was in the shop and they couldn't find any, he didn't even know if they were gonna
Yeah,
get it
it's-
resolved or fixed.
right,
I mean, obviously, the first snowstorm we had, I saw sidewalks were
right.
plowed, so something must have,
But he's also having a tough time getting parts for this thing too.
yeah. I think this was his number 1
Right,
on his list.
Yeah,
I don't know if you did see that, but yeah, it's that.
see it?
They're very specialized, yeah, so. And we would be buying this new, I assume?
Yeah.
I thought, had we talked about leasing for that too, or was that a no-go?
I did not ask him about leasing on this one. It might have come up, but I think this is so
He
specialized.
wouldn't really care. right?
No,
If
no,
it's
he would-
leased or versus,
No,
Yeah, that's more our problems to
right,
figure out.
cause if a lease is available on it, like again, I said, we're spreading it out over a few years. I know that's still a chunk of money, 190 grand, even if it's the max you could do is 5 years. And I don't even know if they have leases for that.
right.
Do we get like, does the state or is there any leasing entities that give municipalities good rates for stuff like that?
Yeah,
That
so I
would
mean,
help us?
especially public safety, they pretty much lease everything, so basically we just send them the,
I mean, it is, you could argue public safety because you're
Yep.
providing
yeah, no, we
walkways for
we can
clear
pretty much
passage.
we can pretty much lease anything.
So if you do a 5-year lease on this, you're looking at about 40,000 a year. Where we're already taking out of capital, we'd have to look at some other source then. Where would we pay for this out of operating expenses? That's an issue I have there. I mean, not only that, with all the other ones we have here too. And I'd like to be fair to Chris. I don't want to give him his Christmas gift, but I like to be fair, and this is important to him. So how do we fund this thing? What's our suggestion? Because if we don't have some idea, it's probably going to get shot down if we can't recommend something before the town. What do you think, Austin?
For the best option? For the best option?
Yeah,
I'm sure we could stretch and make a case maybe that this is a stormwater or something expense, but I mean, I think if there's sufficient funds, I think a one-time expense to buy it and just own it and not have to worry about leasing expenses, especially if we have a hard time fitting it into some sort of an ongoing operating expense.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we still can't explore it. And when it comes down to trying to figure out how to finance things, we can have that in our back pocket. But I think just buying it and owning it outright is probably the quickest and easiest thing to do.
well, do you think, I'm trying to pick one of these items for free cash and not put everything under free cash. Or should we take these items for stabilization?
What's the other ones you're holding there behind those two?
Yeah,
So
I'm
on the dump bodies. Yeah, so.
that
What was that, Harry?
So what
This
I will
one's
say,
already been paid for, so we don't have to worry about that, because we allocated the 60. And Chris told me he still has a 60, he hasn't really spent it
yeah,
yet.
we haven't done anything yet.
And then we have the front end loader.
That's a big one.
That thing is being held together by spit.
And we've got what,
The
the 50
bolts,
for
the
the
screws,
74.
everything in it is starting to, there. I said, can you make stuff yourself? He goes, no, we're just scrounging around seeing where we can find parts for this thing. And that's 230 with a plow.
What I will say is, not just for, all of these projects that are recommended for funding, basically, once we finalize our capital plan, I then send this as well to our state delegation, and we try to offset a bunch of these local costs by state funding. So they funded, for example, some of the improvements to the community center that I think were previously approved a couple of years ago for 80 improvements by the community center. So that took it off the general fund books. That makes no promises, but I think they also like to see the skin in the game that the town has. So however you decide to pay for it, we then can kind of offset by whether it's a grant or state budget, things like that, so.
What in his opinion, or did he even give you one on like, these are the 911 items, this one I can wait another year or two? I have a good welder on site.
No, this one had to happen.
This was his number one. He had one.
Well, I'm talking like
hey,
the
this
front
was-
end
others.
loader,
Yeah.
I mean, cause he said the dump was like, he needs one of those like now,
Right.
right? And then,
This one was right up there.
yeah.
Yeah, this particular one
To
here.
Chris's point, I don't know what happened with the last storm, but, you know, the sidewalks have to be clear.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we push the dump body out a year, save the 60 and put it towards this thing?
I don't think so. I mean, could he probably get by 1 year? Probably could, patching it up, sending it back to his welders again and all that stuff. But I think that other truck they're keeping together too. It's not as bad, but he has to weld the parts on that and everything else too. So I think we do need the dump. He does need the dump, because
Yeah.
being in Rutland with all the snow and everything else in the sand, he should, and it's gonna take him a while to get, he's gotta order it, so. But yeah, this was the other one that he really wanted, cause it's falling apart on him.
That's the front
And
end
this
loader?
would be
or that's
used, and this would be, he could get one for 55 grand used. But,
I
so
know
that
that,
wouldn't be new.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I know that I think probably at your next meeting, we'll have a discussion as well with the finance team about probably some of our long-term debt obligations. I think we've talked a lot about, I think at the select board level, that we have a lot of general fund debt obligations falling off. So projects, whether it's building projects or equipment replacement projects that make more sense to borrow, you know, I do think that we're in a good position to borrow money and kind of fill that debt service, because in FY 26, for example, will be the last year that we have excluded debt service. So we will have 0 excluded debt on our books. And then our general fund debt just keeps falling off tremendously too. So we've got a significant capacity for borrowing as well.
I mean, yeah, because you've got, let's see, the Volvo loader and you've got the 74 Ford that he's saying are being held together by bubble gum, but everything's being, I mean.
A lot of things over there.
Could, if
I mean,
we
I
tell
got
them,
the
if we tell them to scrape out one more year with it, and then could
Well,
we,
exactly,
to
I
your
mean-
point, could we do a package and say, okay, recommend 230 for the loader, which may be up, 250 and 50, 300,000 for replacing their tractors. One's a big loader tractor and one's but for tractors, can we, at that point, if he can hold off another year, maybe we can suggest we borrow 300 for the tractors, and we do the tractors. Next year, we give him the little snowplow tractor, we give him his dump,
Right,
we've worked a deal for the F-350.
right.
Just seems like everything is, again, I need, if it's all being held together by bubble gum, let's go by the severity, what could you maybe get away with for, you can't have all 4, so we'll give you 2 now, and which 2 do you absolutely need, and which 2 can you
That's kind of what I was saying.
weld
like,
together, or
what do you
make
got?
it go? You can't throw all of this at us at once and expect it all to come through.
If it were me, I guess I'd recommend the front end loader, cause it comes with a plow and they use that for plowing as well. And that front end loader right now is the only thing they have that loads all their trucks with sand and salt and all that stuff. So if that breaks down, they're a hard time to do it. So that's where I think that one probably is more important than this tractor here. Definitely this one for the streets.
Yeah, so that's, he never mentioned the loader when he was here, which is why I don't know. He mentioned that, I was looking back and there was never a mention of the loader, so that was kind of a surprise to me, cause he said the little snowplow was his number one, but now it sounds like the loader is, you know, cause he must have gotten the plow back from the shop, cause he used it at the last storm.
Right.
So what, and I totally forgot, especially with DPW, one of the great privileges that DPW has is chapter 90 funds, which you're also authorized to use for equipment replacement as well.
Well, yeah, cause he did say what, state aid, which I was
Right,
wondering
yeah, so
how
that's
they,
the state
how they
aid.
were gonna pull state aid on
Yeah.
some of this.
And the balance of chapter 90 right now is pretty substantial. Obviously, we just used a decent amount for the salt shed. But we get typically $300,000 per year. We used we received an additional $232,000 from the Fair Share Amendment funds. We used about $160,000 of that, so there's still, what's that math? Off the top of my head, it's been a long
And
day.
that was for the salt shed?
Yes.
Okay, so we know that was paid for by chapter 90.
So, what's the balance of 160 and 232? Sorry, again, it's been a long day.
232 money.
There you go. So that plus the, I'm gonna round down to 300, so we've got some money in chapter 90 there as well.
So we're saying what, 372 roughly?
Probably a little bit more because it's a rolling 5-year bond, but conservatively, yeah, let's say that, 372.
So
And you can use that for equipment acquisition, as well as all the other, paving, things like that.
I mean, that's a perfect fit for what we have in front of us. But it's gonna deplete the funds pretty good, real quick.
So we get those every year.
So, but what we're projecting for 26, so he would get it, so we're saying we're gonna have 300 for that fiscal year, is what we're saying, correct? Or you're saying that's what we have now, and
That's what we have on
it'll roll,
balance
we'll
now.
get even more next year.
Yep, so it just
So-
replenishes, and then subject to the legislature and essentially the governor, we may get additional fair share amendment money, so that first year it came out, it was kind of a nice surprise to get that extra 230.
Right.
We haven't received any more since, but
So for the loader
political
and
Yeah.
the little sidewalk plow, we're at 420.
Well, if we could pay most of it for chapter 90, what do we do with where do we get the rest from then? I mean, my
Now,
note,
Austin, is that chapter 90 slotted, or is there anything else looking at eating away at that?
everyone who needs their road. I mean, that's the challenge, right, is obviously $300,000 a year doesn't even cover. It's what, about $1 million a mile or something for total full depth paving. So what we get doesn't even cover the needs for road pavement, so I think that's where you see a lot of towns are either not spending it and waiting to do one big project, or they're buying equipment with it, so. But right now, I think we've done we had to pay for some of the 56 project with the chapter 90 funds, which obviously that project's closed out now. At the top of my head, I don't think we have any plans right now for the use of those funds right now.
so he did
Paving
say,
paving projects, I mean.
so for that, he said, we don't, because the front end loader needs so much work, we only use it for loading trucks right now. We don't use it for anything else because we really can't. Because the parts are too hard to get. So if we break something, maybe we won't even get it. So he's being very careful on this piece. On the tractor, it's just a 74. Could he wait another year on that? Probably. probably. But if we get one that would be used with a cab, this doesn't have a cab right now to it. So when you're plowing and you run over some bees, he's gotta get out of there, cause the cab doesn't protect him from any of that stuff. So he's looking to get an old one for a cab. So he could probably wait another year on that.
Well, yeah, cause that's the problem, he's got the loader and then he's got two tractors. He's got the one that Austin showed us, the orange one for plowing, sanding the
Sidewalk plower.
sidewalk.
For the
And then he's
sidewalks.
got this 74 Ford that he's showing us a John Deere in the picture of.
Right, and he's looking at a used John Deere tractor. Says those are pretty common, those are pretty easy to get.
Sounds like the priority is the loader and the
Sidewalk plower.
Right.
I mean, I'd almost be, as I'm sitting right here and now, just making the recommendation that we do both of those, the majority of through chapter 90, and then the remainder to come out of, I guess it doesn't really matter, cause we can make the recommendation, but, free cash or, which I hate that word, there's no such thing as free
Yeah.
cash. But, yeah, with that or the other account,
Stabilization.
Stabilization.
Cause what we said, what, 60K, and you said, what, 270 from 420, another 50? So you might be pulling a total of 100 out of stabilization.
That sounds about right to everybody?
That has the two probably more important pieces of equipment that he needs.
Yeah, and then shove
This one and just these two
$50,000
pieces right here, what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
The loader and the snow.
Okay.
then push that other tractor.
So was that a recommendation?
I will make that recommendation. I said all that to put that in a motion. I'd like to make the motion of what I just said.
Okay,
I will second that.
okay.
That was messy.
Any discussion?
I was all over the road there.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Bradford, aye.
Second, aye.
Gracie, aye.
Okay. That takes care of DPW. We had discussed the radios for the police department, I believe it was. And I think it was the radios for the police department. Where is it?
I thought we were pushing that one back because of the,
Yeah, that one we're going to recommend going back to the town. It was 25,000, I think, for that.
35 is like-
35 for that, and we just felt that didn't meet the capital expense item, so,
You gonna boost the limit?
yeah. So, we're gonna kick that
100,000.
back, cause that's more of a maintenance item to me than a capital item, what they need, so we're gonna kick that back to the town, let you guys figure it out.
and then what, we had, so the first off, we can pull off the list, but we still have the library, carpet, and then.
Right.
schools.
The senior center, there was some items there.
That was
We've had a
one of
problem,
those.
with particularly the siding they were looking for. I'd like to table that because of the water damage we've had at the senior center. And we don't know what that's gonna cost or what the future's gonna hold, so I don't wanna recommend spending any money on siding at this point. Any questions on that? So,
Is the committee aware? Can I briefly tell them about what I said to the board this afternoon?
sure,
Long story short, don't go to the community center or senior center. Right now, the kitchen and the cafeteria are closed due to, I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago when we had the extreme cold. One of the pipes in the exterior wall, pretty much facing Glenwood Road, froze and burst over the weekend and damaged some flooring and cabinets in the kitchen. So we obviously filed an insurance claim, that will be replaced. Service master was in there, pulling up some of the flooring to get started on the project.
Those guys are a bill, man.
I know.
See
Yeah,
those yellow vans roll up, man, just start cutting checks.
they were just here. And that was, yeah, so they pulled it up and the exterior wall, And separate from the area where there was the water damage from the burst pipe, they found essentially years worth of water damage, mold, and rotted out the sill, pretty much everything, maybe 2 feet from the floor. Probably most of the front of the building was significantly rotted out and needs to be replaced. Pretty much due to there's no gutters on the building. There's mulch right up against the building, so just moisture, water infiltrating that side of the building.
When was the last time that building was sided? Because that sounds like a flashing issue.
I don't know. I don't know. Do you know, Harry? If
I
ever? That might. I
I don't think it was. Siding? No, I think that's the original
Might be
siding when the
original
church
to
was
it.
built.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, we bought it in '95. So, however,
Yeah.
whenever the building was built.
right.
So DPW is getting some costs, obviously to replace what's rotted out, but also to do some drainage work and probably some flashing work there. But so I would pause. I would recommend pausing anything right now.
Yeah, because it's an insurance issue and we still don't know. We're looking at senior centers and all this other stuff, so I don't wanna spend any money on anything like that, you know? Okay, so, do we have a motion to table this until the water damage has been solved and we have an answer on where that
I'll make a
facility
motion.
stands?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call,
Bradford, aye.
Second aye.
Greasy.
Lopez,
Morrison.
Okay. So this has been completed, we don't worry about that anymore. I have not been over to the library, I wanna go over and talk to Carrie. She's looking for carpets on the main floor. This year it's 65 grand. And she's looking for exterior work on the building for 150,000, I think it's siding she's looking for. The building is covered with, we need to take a look at that. And I'm also, the window replacements in the council on aging, the siding, all that kind of stuff, I think we should table at this point. Table at this point because I don't wanna recommend anything on the senior center at all. All right, and then, yeah, the police detail for 26 was 35 grand. And again, we're gonna kick that back. Okay. Okay. That pretty much, well, we haven't discussed the school, and the big one that came before us, and I don't know what we're gonna do there, is the parking lots for the school. I've contacted an individual, and I don't exactly know what they're looking for. If you go down to Glenwood, they have the upper parking lot, they got the parking lot in the front of the building, they got the two parking lots on the back side of the building, and then they got a parking lot directly behind the building. So I don't know what any of this stuff is, so I've got somebody coming in, I've gotta set a date, I'll let you know when it is. If you wanna come, we can do the tour with him and ask him what things are going on here, so we have a better understanding of that.
This
It's
is
not
the-
gonna be an RFP or request.
This
We're
is
just trying to
this
pick
is
his
the
brain.
Wachusett Regional.
These are our
counterpart.
schools, yeah.
Yeah, so they're gonna, whatever you wanna call them, they're gonna, the superintendent, or not a superintendent, but they're gonna come and tell us what.
Not the superintendent, he has no control.
No,
over-
but whoever the grounds maintenance guy is.
No, we're actually going out to, I've actually contacted Holden Trap Rock, which does these kinds of projects. And we have an actual guy coming out who does asphalt paving and everything else. To look at the concrete walkway, the concrete, pieces on the sidewalk, whatever. Curving and the parking lot. When I toured the parking lot with a guy before, I had some issues, and that is, some of the parking lots aren't that bad. So is it gonna be ripped up and totally resurfaced? Or is it gonna be skiffed and then resurfaced? If you have curbing and some of it is cracked and some of it isn't, are replacing 80 feet of curbing? Is that necessary? Can we replace certain pieces of the sidewalk where it's cracked and not replace everything there? So these are things I do not know. The quote gave linear feet and this kind of stuff, but there was no detail with it. So for me, I need a lot more detail if we're gonna spend $4 million. And that's what the 3 schools are totally gonna be. So if you're interested, I'll let you know when we're gonna get together to tour that.
Yes, please do.
So when we had the original bid come in, Austin, what was was there any kind of scope? Like, what did we use as a basis to say, hey, we're looking to get this priced out? Was it like completely resurface,
So,
portion?
yeah, just wanna remind that this was not, the town did not conduct this price solicitation. As a part of the capital plan, I asked the schools, like any other department, to provide their cost estimates for these
Yeah.
projects. Because if you recall, the initial, actually, last year's paving was like,
400 grand?
Yeah.
well, for all 3, it was like 9 something.
Right.
Oh, well, yeah,
Which-
yeah.
Was low, in my opinion, was low for big parking lots like that.
Yeah, like, that's why I asked scope.
Yeah.
There's also
If
some
you're
middle
talking
ground between 1 and 4.
Right, and we don't know what it was.
If you're talking
what it was too, so-
repairs, that's a different conversation. If you're talking all new,
So my initial conversation, I think, so Mark Wild, the facilities director, reached out on the state bid list, a handful of contractors, invited them to, essentially because this wasn't a formal bidding process, essentially like
come check this out.
come check this out and provide.
Okay.
It looks like it's a formal bid, but this was more for our
Right.
education. So he walked through each of the schools, and I think they looked at some of the areas that were definitely in most need. He did say to me, he said this wasn't including, some parts of the sidewalks that looked like they were in good condition, or some parts of paving that looked like they were in good condition. This was replacing, I think it's definitely no question that when you look at some of the sidewalks on Glenwood, at Glenwood.
Yeah.
Naquag, definitely especially. And then some areas of the parking lots, those would be full depth. And then some other areas were probably just a light milling and overlay kind of thing, so.
I know it's not really our prerogative, but just, when I was there the other day looking at it, doing pickup, there's a lot of places that I don't think we need to do the entire massive Glenwood concrete sidewalk at the front of the building, on the east side of the building. That is definitely a perfect candidate for saw cutting out the sections that are damaged and then repouring, refinishing.
Especially closer to the building, that's in
Right.
perfect shape.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you can tell what's going on there. It's the salting, and the bus is hitting the concrete as they pull in, which is fine. I get it. So maybe granite curbing there. So like that's where I see there's a lot of potential to do things economically, but that's why but I looked at the parking lots too. I mean, they're not like there's no safety hazards there. Like, yeah, it's the asphalt's got some cracking in it, but it's not like hey, this isn't safe. In my opinion, again, I'm not that guy, but in my opinion, I think they're fine.
Some of the areas, we do have ADA concerns.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
especially
Yeah,
for
those you can't
school.
get. Yep.
Yep. I think that's definitely which I think the schools have done an ADA evaluation, that's parking lots are always one of the things that we get to hit on. For ADA and transition plans, things like that, so. But I think the town is also, especially, you notice if anyone goes to Naquag, we've kind of tried to chip out some of the areas that are in the most need. And we've used just some local funds, operational highway funds, and replaced some of those every year. We also just did, I don't know if you noticed over the summer, the stop sign near Central Tree Middle School, we kind of replaced that intersection there with some new paving there, so. This would be definitely a much more comprehensive project, and to your point, I think a little bit more selective. It's interesting you mentioned the granite curbs, especially at Glenwood. Another one of those where it was actually originally a part of the scope of the building
They
project.
cut it out to save
And
money.
they cut it to save money.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
were
if you're gonna use granite curbing, that is a perfect scenario to use it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna use it anywhere else, honestly, it's a waste of money, but that is a perfect.
Yeah.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, it's a damn shame.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, we have no control over the cost.
No.
But we do have control over making sure we understand the process.
So ultimately, we will, right, because they're our property, so we will be responsible for the actual bidding of this project. I think, obviously, this CIP process, especially for schools, is because we're gonna be responsible for bidding for everything for a school project, because we own the building, right? So, I think this is meant to be sort of like giving the committee an idea about what the cost would be, but it's still, I think, on the committee and me as the procurement officer to do our due diligence also to make sure that these estimates are accurate, so.
So to use the information that you're just gonna walk and ascertain, we have some already.
Well, I
What do
wanna
we-
take pictures, I wanna take notes, so
Yeah.
we know kind of the scope of the thing.
I agree. With what we're projecting though, do we need to start hedging the bet, so to speak, that 900 is low?
Oh, I think so.
Should we talk about addressing that now in this coming budget?
I don't, my concern is if we try to address it and we go for 4 million to do this in a town,
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? So that's where like, you're not gonna stand up in front of this town and tell them, hey, we got a $4 million
What I'm-
without having something in our pocket to show them.
and looking at the process, I'm looking more at 2027 for this project. Because all the pieces come together and finding where the money and how the money, and getting past, because we're gonna be doing it 2.5. I think, I can't be sure, I'd have to ask Austin his opinion, but because we're, whether it's 500,000 or 1 million or whatever it is, I think we're gonna have to need some money. I don't wanna put that 4 million this year.
No, but what I'm saying is so in 2027 or 28 or whatever we feel is
Right.
most reasonable,
We, to
should
get all
we be
the,
updating that now? We know it's not gonna be 900.
yeah. We can go with the 4 million, I don't have a problem with that. It's just that I wanna make sure that the 4 million is what's being covered, what we do, if that makes sense. We can spend 4 million, but is it being done right? I don't wanna have to go back in 3 years and say, oh, Jesus, we should have done this, or we should have done this. We've been through that in the town so many times.
Just for me, I'm just thinking about projecting a budget.
Okay.
And we know it's not gonna be 900, so I don't know what the number is. Is it 2, is it 3?
For our purposes, we could probably project to 4 million.
Yeah.
You know, and if we come in better, great. If we don't, because it's not set in cement, we're not recommending it yet. So
Yeah.
if we want to, sure, we could put that on for 2027 in that particular year for,
Yeah, and the only reason I'm saying that is maybe, and again, you guys have a lot more experience with stuff like this, but as we get to 2027, people are like, wait, this went from 900 to 400, but you were discussing it for a year.
right.
I don't know. I don't know if that even happens or if people actually even follow some of this stuff. I don't know,
Well,
but
it's amazing, you know, I don't think that's even on the, if I remember, I don't think that's even on the budget.
That's what I was wondering, is it even out there, the projection
I
as
don't
it
think
stands
is,
at 900?
So last year, it was on the
was
capital
on there,
request summary,
yeah.
For 960. But because it was a future request, I don't think we didn't spend any time talking about it.
So no one questioned what
Right.
that.
Right.
Until it became this year, it's like 960, what really caught my eye was, the price didn't increase from last year to this year, it still stayed at 960, so that doesn't seem right, and then we had our own town hall parking lot done for free. But the cost of that was around $200,000, so if our parking lot.
that's not a massive part.
No, if our parking lot was 200 and those massive parking lots were only 960, that was kind of a red flag for me,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and Austin, is this on coming off your shared drive, the FY 26 through 31 capital summary? It looks like you've actually got it updated for fiscal year 26 as I start. It looks like it's broken down, Central Tree 1.459 mil. You know, let's see, Glenwood 1.2, Naquag 1.2, totals basically 4 mil. So
Right.
is this,
Yeah, so that's
the public
reflective
can
of,
see this, or is this shared drive, this is just?
nope, that was what I just shared with you guys.
Okay, so the public hasn't seen those figures.
Correct,
They're
yeah,
still
so-
looking at the old ones at
That's
950.
this piece here that we were submit, right?
Okay.
Yep, so they will, yes, so, there's the 3 different schools there, so I just broke it out
Okay.
for you
So you
guys.
captured it in that, but we haven't captured it here.
No,
Correct, yeah, so this, once you guys finalize your recommendations and we finalize the capital plan and the capital budget, that's when all of this will become public.
Okay.
Okay.
But just one thought, I guess, if we're gonna have some folks come out to look at the school parking lots and ends up being big money, is there an interest among the committee to also have them look at some of the town parking lots? I know especially if, hopefully no one has had a reason to go to the police station, or be in the back of the police station, but there's some significant issues there, behind the fire station as well. If you've gone to the Wood Studio, you know that there's some issues there. DPW's, I think, fine. This parking lot, I think, is fine. The senior center, the back end of the senior center, we just did some work at stabilizing some gravel there, but, if we're gonna do big paving, is there
Well,
an
that's
interest in adding some?
absolutely, because that's where you actually get it done for less money.
Cheaper.
Once you break it out, I mean, you're gonna have two different budgets, you're gonna have towards the schools, and then you're gonna have towards
Yeah.
well, there still are buildings, so I guess I'd leave that up to you guys, but you're gonna get a package deal. The more work you can provide, so you're actually paying less to accomplish things that if you were to do separately and break them out 10, 15 years later, you're gonna pay a lot more money for. So that would be an argument, I could stand up in front of town and have that argument all day long.
Okay.
Paving all the town lots.
Yeah.
Yep.
But again, if we go from a $4 million to an $8 million, that's not gonna fly.
Yep.
But.
But at least
if
you would
it's-
have an idea what the
yeah.
cost is, right? Yeah.
We could actually put that in 2030 when we have our $10 million sewer project.
Gonna have a rock star year that year. Oh, man.
And I'm just, there's, maybe a handful of town lots that maybe need some attention. The town hall parking lot was in bad shape, but that's been taken care of. Memorial, field lot, we just had, Sinkowich's company do, was it, chip sealing? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So it's not quite paving, but it's maybe more of a campground style parking lot. So that's in decent shape now. So I'm just thinking maybe like the senior center.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd want to do the senior center, because we don't know what's happening. with
I know,
that.
yeah.
Same thing with the
What's the
safety
plan, right?
complex. We
Right.
keep
Yeah.
bumping the safety complex design, cause
Right.
it's,
Right. Yeah, we got some big decisions coming, that's for sure. This was part of the Wachusett capital plan. Ron has here Naquag, $100,000 walk-in freezer. Has that been dealt with, do you know?
Yeah, so this capital plan, they funded this with their, it's a school lunch revolving fund.
Okay.
So, the schools paid for those capital projects themselves.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about this.
Yep, that and Glenwood, yep.
Okay,
That was done, I think, last year.
okay. I have not been down to the schools or Glenwood to look at the carpeting. There's an issue there, and we were talking about if we're gonna do carpeting for one school wants it here, and the next school, next year, the next school wants
All
it.
at once, yeah.
Why don't we do it all the same and try to get the best rate to have it done? So I don't even know how bad they are. I don't even see any, I don't know if it came from Wachusett or who it came from, but we don't have any quotes. All we have is just a piece of paper with a picture of the school on it and saying this is what it's gonna be. So I'm trying to figure out, we're trying to figure out,
So for the carpet replacement projects, I believe the town of Holden recently did carpet replacement, and I believe Wachusett Facilities Department used the costs associated with that project to assume what the cost would be for our Rutland project. So they used kind of recent
okay.
bids for the price estimates here. So just, go ahead, sorry.
I haven't been in the schools for a while, but what's under, is it fully carpeted? And then what's under the carpet? Is it asbestos? Tiles or things?
That I don't know.
Carpet.
Shouldn't be asbestos in
Well,
Glenwood.
the tiles,
So.
probably not in Glenwood because that's fairly,
Naquag,
So I think, and the experts obviously in the room can speak better to this than I can, but I think they're just trying to get rid of the carpets for a couple of reasons. One, cleanliness, well, probably the highest priority is cleanliness and replacing with is it VCT?
Yeah, the vinyl, it's heavy, yeah, it's a heavy traffic vinyl.
So it won't be carpet, it'll be
Correct.
a vinyl?
Correct.
Okay,
So converting everything, all the carpets
Okay.
to VCT.
okay,
tile.
which makes better sense.
Yes, that's really the outstanding piece of the carpeting yet.
So it's Naquag.
Just the classrooms though, and the library portion of the schools, the rest of schools tile.
Right.
I have traffic vinyl.
But, I mean, what I just said, that's what we did talk about, right? Of how we can combine the two to get the best rate, the best deal, getting it done. Okay.
Yeah, if that's like one of those things, you spread it out each year. That's one of the cases where I'm not better off spreading it out. You're
Right.
better off doing a deal.
So, between this year and next year, 175 for Glenwood and Naquag for
Right.
carpet replacement.
So 350?
No, that's total.
No.
Oh,
One
total.
25 for one and 50 for
Yep.
another.
Okay.
So, at ballpark, may add 25 grand just for 200 grand. For,
200 for two schools.
I hate to do that, but things are expensive.
See, I guess I'm feeling like, how do we do it? How bad are the carpets? Could it wait another year? Did Wachusett, what I have a problem, not a problem, what I have a concern about is Wachusett gives us these projects, but they don't tell us whether it's a rating of 1 through, how bad are these carpets? We're putting it in this year, but could we wait till next year to do them? I don't know if they're thread-borne, if they're really bad, I have no idea that, you know what I'm
I have a
saying?
feeling if they were that bad, we would get a lot more pushback to get this thing through. I feel like this is like, hey, we know this is coming, let's put it in.
Well, it was on, they were both on last year, we bumped them.
Right,
And they didn't combine Naquag and Glenwood this year, they bumped, they just bumped both of them out.
I feel like we'd be
If
getting
it,
a
if it
phone
was,
call.
yeah.
They've been
your
trying to
point.
spread out, like their capital plan, I think they try to spread it out. Obviously, there's some things that are bigger that it's much harder to spread out, but I think they're looking at their, and they're using the custom, average useful life for some things, and especially for some of the larger, like the boilers and roofs, things like that.
and I wish they would, from my perspective, I wish it would work with their capital, would work with our capital better. Because all of a sudden, we get this from them, and we don't know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we're responsible for the town, but they're recommending, and we should be doing that.
Yeah, I think that's the ongoing challenge with the regional school is they're,
Yeah,
not us, but they're part of it, like, there's,
Right.
we own the assets, but they operate the assets, right, so, and the services, so.
Thank you.
I will say this is the earliest they have submitted their capital projects, based off of, I think, mostly some of the feedback that we've expressed from Rutland.
yeah.
Like that presentation was almost a couple of months ago at this point, which is earlier than typical for them, so. But again, this is gonna be something that we're gonna have to bid, so we'll be responsible for it. So it's gonna be on us to do our due diligence to.
So does anybody want to join me on the rug walkthrough, just to see if there's something we need to recommend this year? Or put on our agenda this year? Because I'd like to get that done next week.
Yeah,
if we're
I
gonna
don't
do it.
mind. Or if they could at least send us pictures. I don't know if they can do that, but
So what if, one of the best times to get into the schools is school vacation? If maybe we could ask to do
Okay,
a tour during the February vacation?
sure.
So maybe if we deferred some of the school discussions until, I don't know, when is school?
Or MLK Day,
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Yeah,
that's coming up quickly, depending on what your timeline is on things to
yeah.
make decisions.
Because I don't feel.
I don't feel like it's an emergency though.
No, and I don't feel like we should say, well, it's been recommended, okay, let's do it, the schools need it. I think we need to be responsible for that decision, what we're doing. And if it needs it, then that's what we do.
So like even expanding that conversation, looking down the road, the rooftop HVAC, boiler pump replacement, et cetera, for 600,000 over 27 and 28 fiscal years. That's for Central Tree Middle School, things like that, like there's gotta be somebody somewhere that is putting together this information and says, hey, I know that unit. I know its life is this,
Right.
this is why it's going to be replaced, and here's an estimate based on that. So where does that come from?
And I'd like
It's,
to,
yeah, so it's the facility, so first and foremost, it started, each of the buildings are run by the building principals. So they develop the budgets and kind of initial capital requests for the facilities department, along with kind of the custodial staff. They then submit that to the facilities director for the district, who then kind of coordinates a little bit more, gets some more information if there's additional price solicitations required. And then he compiles that, and submits that to the business and finance, or actually, I think they have their own capital, committee, who then reviews this and approves that, sends it to the school committee, who then sends it to us.
And I have less question there. My bigger question is 1.5 to do the roof replacement and then 2 years later do the roof HVAC. If you're
Right.
replacing the roof, why don't you do the HVAC at the same?
right,
Or do the HVAC first, then do the roof, because it's an incorporated system of the roof. You can't.
right.
That's like putting in a new road and then you gotta go redo the sewer line. It's like, okay.
So I'm wondering if we should reach out to the building supervisor, whatever, and have them come to a meeting where we're discussing these items to get his feedback, the way we would with a department chair.
I think
Or-
we've asked that, I think maybe a couple times. Yeah.
I-
We said, hey, can we get a representative from Wachusett in here to kind of go through this? And
Yeah.
it just never went anywhere.
Maybe I could reach out, if Austin does a problem, and just say, hey, I'm gonna CIP, you're the building guy. Can we get together and talk about this stuff? We like, know what's going on.
Yeah, or like, so Austin, when the schools have a problem and you get a phone call, who is calling you?
The facilities director,
Okay.
yeah. So like when the,
So like
When
this
the
stuff, can you be
boiler
like,
went
hey
in-
bud, can you send me some info on this
yeah.
$1.5 million roof? Like what's driving that? Do we have leaks? Is there a potential mold problem now?
So I think they're getting better at work with us on
Yeah.
stuff. So the parking lot was a good example of, I think we pushed back a little bit and said, hey, we need some more information on that. They came back with obviously what you got there. So Mark is a resident. I think he'd be more than happy to come to a committee meeting and discuss all these projects with you. And answer any of your questions. I do think it probably would be helpful for the committee if we did do a walkthrough,
I'm all for it because we do it all at the same time.
Right.
for sure. And
It'd be great if the facilities manager was there with us.
Oh, yeah, he would be
You
the
know
one.
what I mean? Like-
He would be the one taking us.
Okay.
And probably, so one of our school committee reps is on the capital committee as well. Or buildings, I can't remember the name of it, but he would probably, Brett, I think it's Brett Beardmore.
Right, yeah.
I think he'd be the one joining us as well.
Okay.
Represent. But-
Yeah, that's fine. More the merrier.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, when we do that, we can ask them about the roof as well, not just the rugs.
Yeah.
We look at this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's very important that we have some kind of communication and contact from Wachusett. Because
Yeah, 'cause if you look at our
schools-
budgets, that's,
Our schools are
most of
getting
our budget.
older. Oh, yeah, I mean, this
So-
is, we're doing parking lots, rugs, we're doing roofs, all that. So, yeah, it's a very important part of getting, and I think also, I've had awful trouble in the past doing that stuff, but I do think they're getting better.
So would you, so I'd be happy to reach out to Mark. Do you wanna do them coming here first, or do you wanna do a walkthrough?
I think a
First.
walkthrough first.
I think a walkthrough is way more
Yeah.
beneficial than, and because after that, we may not even need them to come to a meeting. It's
Makes
like,
sense.
hey, we saw it, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Because at that point, they can tell us why that HVAC unit needs to be replaced in 2 years.
So what's the best time?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King?
I'm not going anywhere for winter break. Martin Luther King, I don't know, what were you?
When's Martin Luther King Day?
It's Monday the 20th.
Celebrate it?
Monday the
coming
20th,
up
and when's school vacation?
February
Are you gonna
17th.
celebrate?
Yeah.
Week beginning 2/17.
Okay, so January 20th is
a
Martin
Monday.
Luther King.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if we can get it earlier than later, because we gotta make a decision on this for a recommendation, how we're gonna do it. If it's that critical, I wouldn't wanna wait until February, because then we're running.
Well, if the only
the
thing
reason
we're
is,
asking for though is the carpets, we can probably get feedback or pictures and
Right, my concern is we've gotta get our report in supposedly by the end of February, we'll never do that. By the time we get all this done, we'll get it in probably the end of March for the, I mean, we can do the old report, but for getting it to the finance committees, and the town, so they can set the budget, know where we are. I'd like to get it done as soon as possible, cause we do have to report to that. So if we can do Martin Luther King,
If the facilities managers are willing to do that, because that is a federal or a federal holiday, so.
right,
Let me just check.
That might be tough for me.
for you,
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
I can't, I'm not around.
I'm okay, okay,
that's why I was saying if the only thing for 26 we need to make a recommendation on is the carpets, I feel like we could probably get, either have them show up or give us pictures, give us an idea. But to your point, as far as looking at a 5-year scope, I would like to spend more time and go through the entire building and look
Right.
at everything, but I'm not worried about something 5 years down the road. I don't need to see that right away to make my recommendation for next fiscal year
Okay.
to.
So if you want I could probably get pictures for the committee tomorrow. And send it to you guys, if you want pictures.
Just of the carpet, cause I think the
carpets.
carpet's the only thing on next year's. It's really the only pressing thing that we need to make a decision on,
And
everything
then
else.
maybe we can organize a walkthrough or something like during the summer. To look at the 5-year and have him walk us through all the buildings and point out some of the projects, if that makes sense for a larger review, if that makes sense for the committee.
yeah, see,
My only
I,
hesitation would be, oh, sorry, go ahead.
in the back of my mind, I'm saying, if the carpets are that bad, what else is wrong? Cause there's a lot of traffic there that goes through. What other issues are there?
This is school.
I don't know,
So
I've
Naquag
seen
is
it, I
the
mean, I
oldest
don't-
school in the district.
yeah,
No, I remember.
Right, and I think Glenwood is what, 20 years old?
yeah,
Central Tree is
probably about
maybe a little
12,
older.
15, I think 12.
Well, Glenwood is our
10.
newest school,
Yeah,
I think, so.
so could be, yeah,
I mean, so definitely there's work that's needed at all.
Well, to your point, we could do like a full walkthrough, like in February break or something like that. I'm just saying, I don't,
For purposes of putting together our immediate report, the carpet seems to be,
the only
we need
necessary.
verification if that's even really gonna be required.
Check.
right.
How much do you think it would come out with the work and the labor?
200,
What do
I
you,
think.
So I think, yeah, ballpark, it was 175 if you add a little bit
So
to 200.
is that,
Yeah.
and that's, you would be putting in for bids?
We'd have to bid that, yeah, town would, yeah.
And is there any money from the school or the state available for rehabilitation of schools?
There is, but not for carpets.
Okay,
At the top of my head, I know that there's boiler replacements through the accelerated repair program. I think windows are included, maybe roofs are included in the accelerated repair. That's through the MSBA program that actually, we have the schools submit on our behalf, so we have the select board ask the school superintendent, and they ask on our behalf.
so school
Some of
vacation? Is that better for everybody?
For a full walkthrough, yeah.
Yeah,
And then I can get some I can go to the schools tomorrow and get pictures of the carpets.
And talk to the guy you talked to and say, hey, what's driving this and where are the bad spots? Is one worse than the other? Is Naquag a safety issue because the kids are tripping on the, the beat it up carpet? I don't know, but yeah, if there's any way to prioritize them.
Yep.
yeah.
Maybe we do, we do a package deal, obviously, like we said, but figure out what's really needed.
Any other questions or comments for Austin? Before we close, I would like to get your feel on how you think we did tonight. We covered
did
a
a
lot
lot.
of stuff, we
did a lot.
funded a lot of stuff, so what do you think?
Covered a lot. Do we have to pick more dates? Are we?
I was just gonna say, do we need to go back and actually
And
assign
rate, I was wondering
ratings
about the
to some of
ratings.
these that we didn't rate last time?
We made the recommendation, we can go back and rate them, so we have that on the system, but we've already made our recommendation, so, yeah. And we do have our
The rating
ratings.
system's almost internal
Right,
to us, where then we can prioritize, but I think what we went over covers that. But to your point, yeah, it is, if
I
if
just.
we're gonna stay
if-
consistent.
If
then we
you're,
should.
I'd like to-
if somebody says, well,
we
why
stay
did you
consistent, yeah.
prioritize this over this, and this has a rating and this doesn't, then
I got you, yeah.
did it rate
That's what I'm
higher, or was it
saying.
just your
Yeah.
personal opinion, or are you biased
Right,
towards?
right, because we've always tried to
You're right,
maintain this
you're right.
committee as a
How come your road's getting plowed before mine? What the?
I can tell you one thing, the road I live on does not get plowed. It does, they actually do a decent job, but.
What do you think, Susan?
Overall, general, I was wondering about the rating. I think just
Okay.
to keep it, the validity of everything that the committee has really done, I think it's important to have
like
that
it.
rating. I know we have
Consistency,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think we have our
are we
priorities.
okay if we do
but I
that the
think-
next time?
Yeah.
Okay. Comment, Chris, anything?
No, I think I'm on the same page. Obviously, I just made the comment about rating it just to cover ourselves, so.
Yep.
But other than that, I think, no, I think
Okay.
we covered a lot.
Written?
I appreciate you getting some of that information, from Chris that we were held up on.
Yeah.
And some of the other people, it's a
That
huge
was
help,
helpful.
obviously,
That was
today.
really helpful.
To get that feedback, and I know that's a lot on you for extra time and meetings and
But
walkthroughs.
Chris was great about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we sat there, we talked, you know,
Yeah,
because he was, you know, he's concerned about getting his stuff, so
so
I
that,
appreciate that.
yeah, that's awesome, and you would kind of think that for these leaders of these particular entities, they would want to get the funding, so they'd be open to coming and helping us understand what it's for,
Right.
so, but I appreciate that, and then Austin, I appreciate you coming in tonight as well.
Right.
Yes, thank
Like,
you.
Really do
that's
appreciate it.
that's a huge help for us.
I guess I will go back, cause obviously to Dan's point, we're gonna have to set next meetings. We took a fairly long break due to numerous
Right.
things, so now we're kind of on more of an expedited, so do we need to talk about a revamped timeline, or how much we need to try to do,
Yeah, that was another issue I was
next
considering.
steps sort of thing?
I would not like to see us go a month for the next one. I think we have too much going on, that we need to get things done, get the reports together, that we're gonna submit our recommendations, that kind of stuff. So would anybody be agreeable, say, in 3 weeks to get together versus 4?
30th?
What's on the 30th? No, that was gonna be the town meeting, okay, 30th. Yep,
20.
how's that working for everybody? I know I'm open for it,
You're saying what, on the 30th?
yeah.
I am not sure at this point.
Same with me.
I know I
29th?
could, well, I will potentially, I've got a out-of-town work meeting that week. I just don't know if I will be back by Thursday night or not.
Okay. Well, that's one day, excuse me. Because our next one was gonna be February,
6th.
yeah,
It's town meeting day.
huh?
It's town meeting day.
Oh,
Special
forget
town
that, it's town meeting day. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, we could do
try a
it.
different day. I mean, Wednesdays are always gonna be hard for me, but
Yeah.
Tuesdays are sometimes doable.
Okay,
Maybe the 4th.
Tuesdays I just have to make sure there's no planning board on Tuesdays, that's my
meet on
only.
Tuesdays, okay. Monday's the
Tuesdays are
3rd
typically good.
is a select board meeting, so I can't do that one.
What about the 23rd,
But
January 23rd? It's 2 weeks, but
that's fine with me. I would rather
3rd.
see that so we can start getting some of this stuff put together.
I can do that.
I
Works?
can do
I
the
think I
23rd.
can, let me just double check one other
Okay.
calendar. Yes.
yeah, that works for me.
Okay,
Unanimous?
okay, 23 works, great.
6.
Same place, same time. Okay. Any other comments before we close? Nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
8:04.
Second that?
second, any discussion? Thank you.
Now
Roll
you're gonna
call.
leave the open space, huh?
Roll call.
Bradford, aye.
Second, aye.
Gracie, aye.
Lopez, aye.
Morrison, aye.
All right, thank you, everybody, it was great.